Hello and welcome to episode 16 of Off the Cuff. And this is part 3 of Reap J Lamb. I didn't even think I was going to do a part 2, and I definitely didn't think I was going to do a part 3, although I had a weird suspicion some more information was going to pop up and maybe cause me to want to do one. And that's exactly what happened. Someone commented on one of the previous episodes, hey, check this film out, Studio 666, which I did, and voila, a lot more information popped up that is directly related to all this abstract stuff that I've been talking about. And I often wonder what people think when they see this stuff. Do they think I just sound completely nuts? Do they think it's fascinating and they just don't know what to say? Or is it just something to pass the time while people are stoned? I don't know. This stuff it's bizarre to me. I mean, I talk about this type of stuff a lot, and it's still continues to shock and awe me how this stuff permeates through in the entertainment that we watch, and people just don't notice it. They don't seem to notice it or care or think it means anything. So we went over occult symbolism and themes within Pearl Jam's first album, 10. And I even did a review in part 2. So you want to watch part 1 and part 2 to familiarize yourself with all this abstract stuff. I went ahead and actually did a written blog where I jotted all down. So if you prefer to read and you want to see the pictures, it's all here. I just put it all in one place. Talk about the anagram and the 5 members and the Kabbalah, the Eye of Providence, the pyramid, how the hands form a pyramid. Here you can really see it. How this big A here is actually a trapezoid, and how these little A's are aligned perfectly with that larger A to make trapezoids. And they're basically raising up the capstone to go on top there, which is really just the Eye of Providence, the Illuminati. It seems like they worship the Illuminati. That's who their boss is. That's what they're telling you there. And then with verses, which the original title was 5 Against 1, the 5 members of the band. 5 members of the band against the one who they're raising up on the first album. And of course, Verses, the name of the album, is a V and a S. V is a Roman numeral for 5. Who are they against? I don't know. S, I am guessing maybe stands for Satan. 5 against Satan. So again, I'm just glossing over this because I went over this stuff in the previous episodes. So I want to kind of get to the meat of the matter here. Now, this is just really weird. I've been noticing how Pearl Jam, I haven't been following them very much over the years, but I'm noticing they put out these album covers with these, these eyeballs on it. And what is this? What is this all about? What's this binaural thing? I mean, you get this weird, otherworldly spiritual vibe. It's that creepy Illuminati vibe that you feel when you look at that. That's what that is. It's a creepy cult that's behind all this, that runs everything, that they have to pay homage to, it seems. And they did it again with their latest album, Dark Matter. I mean, what kind of name is that? It's all has this weird, creepy, slimy, occult feel around it. And the first thing I thought of when I saw this was the Eye of Sauron from Lord of the Rings. I mean, what does that mean when Pearl Jam is like putting the Eye of Sauron on their album cover? And we're not joking. This is dark matter. This is a dark matter we're talking about. I mean, these people, they're not who we think they are. They're working for the Illuminati. That's what that eyeball is. It's the Illuminati. And if you don't know what the Illuminati is, I mean, you don't really need to. It's a dark, nefarious cult of very powerful people that hide in the background, and they put this little eyeball in front of you and they try to creep you out and make you think they're all elite and that they have all this knowledge, but they're really just a bunch of assholes that want to control you. And they kill people, and the cost of life is nothing to them. But the thing is, they remain hidden. We can't see them, and that's the problem. We need transparency. We need to shine a light. And the only way to do that is we have to understand how they think. And that's why all this weird symbolism and creepy things, it's important to understand and study this. And this is why the mainstream media needs to make clowns out of people who do study this stuff, because some of these people are genuine clowns. I probably play the clown sometimes myself. But we've got to pick this apart and understand it, because it's how they think. And we see into the mechanics of their machine. And the more we do that, the more we can reveal who they are and what they're doing, and we can put a stop to this stuff. So again, if you want to just sort of see everything all put together from Reap J Lamb Part 1, 2, and 3, it's all on this blog here, batshitcave.blogspot.com. So now this movie, Studio 666, I'd never seen before. And you can believe me or not believe me, but I'm telling you that's the truth, is that I only watched it a few days ago because someone posted a comment on my last episode of the one before saying, hey, you got to check this out. And I can see why, because it was like, holy shit, you know, this just got twice as weird, all of it. So in the poster, we see David Grohl's head. He's at the top, and it's almost like kind of triangle shape, right? The house and these two circles here are almost like kind of Sephiroth, and his head is at the top. And this gets back into what I was talking about with the whole triangle and the Eye of Providence, and the 1 is on top and the 2, 3, and we're all down here in this lower part. So hopefully you've kept up with all that so far. So Studio 666, the film stars all members of Foo Fighters, including David Grohl and Pat Smear, who were both in Nirvana when Kurt Cobain died. Pat Smear was also in the Germs back in the early 80s, whose singer also died. That was Darby Crash. He's in that movie Decline of the Western Civilization, and that guy was messed up. Anyway, that makes at least 3 bands that Pat Smear was in, which has or had band members who are now dead. And, you know, I guess when you get older, you get to a certain age, you know, we're all going to know people that died. But Pat Smear isn't really that old. And Darby Crash, you know, in the Germs, they were all very young when that happened. And in Nirvana, they were all pretty young too when Kurt Cobain died. So I don't know if we can really use the, you know, these are older musicians excuse, because they really weren't older when a lot of these deaths occurred. So let's take a look at some interesting sequence of events here. In October of 2019, the band Foo Fighters announced that they were recording their 10th studio album based on demos by Grohl. By February 2020, Grohl announced that the new album was complete. In November 2021, it was reported that a film starring the Foo Fighters entitled Studio 666 had been shot in secret. Grohl recorded a whole album of heavy metal songs for the in-movie fictional band Dream Widow. This was the fictional band featured in the film. Dave Grohl actually wrote a whole album that was supposedly their album in the movie, which that's the album they're writing. The album was released on March 25th, 2022, consisting of 8 tracks. This is the Dream Widow album we're talking about. Studio 666 was released theatrically on February 25th, 2022 by Open Road Films. The film held its world premiere at the TLC Chinese Theater on February 16, 2022. On March 25th, 2022, Taylor Hawkins, who's the drummer of Foo Fighters, died in his room. No cause of death was given. That's from Wikipedia. So let's break this down. Foo Fighters recorded their 10th studio album between October 19th and February 2020. That's 4 months. Not very long for a band this big. By November of 2021, the band had also completed filming a movie in secret, which was Studio 666. It premiered on February 25th, 2022. Grohl released an entire album of music for the fictional band that appears in the film on March 25th, 2022. Now, March 25th, 2022 is the same day Taylor Hawkins died. So what the hell does that mean? To summarize, Dave Grohl allegedly recorded 2 albums and a film between October 2019 and probably late 2021, assuming the film was completed a couple months before the film was released, and that's being generous. That means Grohl did all of that within about 2 years. This is a band that typically released one album every 2 to 4 years. We could be generous and say that the COVID lockdown provided Grohl and company more time to get more accomplished. But look how they spent that time. It is also worth noting that Foo Fighters claim they actually recorded their 10th album in the same house the movie was filmed. Wikipedia quotes Grohl stating the house seemed to be haunted, but Grohl later admitted he was lying about that just for effect. At what point does the audience acknowledge the obvious effort to convince them that the story in the film is the story in reality? In the above scene, a possessed David Grohl forces Taylor Hawkins to finish the drum tracks on the band's 10th album. Immediately upon completion, Dave Grohl throws a cymbal at Hawkins' head, killing him. While Taylor's bloodied body flopped to the floor, Grohl flips him off. Now, before we get into this any further, just think how disrespectful this scene is towards his former bandmate and his loved ones in retrospect. While we can excuse him for, quote, not knowing in advance that his bandmate would very soon be dead in reality, there is no excuse for the fact that this film is still totally available and collecting money from fans of the band. You would think he would say, oh, we got to get rid of that movie. We can't look at that. But no. They still have it out there. But let's just note something here, and maybe you were just along for the ride to see what crazy theory I'm going to come up with next. But just look at how Hawkins was executed. The top of his head was separated from the bottom. Remember this? This is the tree of life. You see the head in the background, and this line's going right through the head because you think of the supernal triad, the 1, 2, 3. This is the top. It's kind of a correspondence here with the illuminated eye above the trapezoid, which is the lower sections of the tree, you could say. And we observe that 1 was the top. 1, 2, 3. Well, look here. Look what Dave Grohl's doing. He's flipping the bird, but it's also a 1. I feel like there's something really gruesome and weirdly symbolic being depicted here that relates to what we're talking about. So what does this represent if we assume the industry is run by an elite group that worships the illuminated eye at the top of the pyramid of life? It seems to me that Hawkins was rebelling, and this was the cost of that rebellion. The film is sending a message to others that would rebel. It helps to look at this from the mafia angle. You cross the wrong people, you pay with your life. And when they take your life, they will make an example of you to freak others out. That is the main purpose of this film, in my opinion. But that doesn't mean Hawkins wasn't chosen way in advance to be sacrificed anyway. It's impossible to know many things for sure, but Hawkins' death was planned, and it seems they want us to know that. Now, the significance of the Dream Widow album being released on the same day that Taylor Hawkins died is that in the plot of the film, it is the completion of the album that basically spells death for Hawkins and other band members, because there's some kind of evil incantation that occurs as the result of the album being completed. So by killing Taylor Hawkins on the same day that the album comes out, they're stepping out the fictional story of the movie. They're stepping it out into reality, and the blood is real. You see what I mean? I mean, this is all very sick, what I'm telling you here. And it's hard to describe because it's so obvious yet so diabolical and strange, and it's right in our faces. And I think they want it to be right in our faces. So near the beginning of the film, the band is getting scolded by their manager for being slow in producing their 10th album. Now, remember, Pearl Jam's first album is called 10, and there's going to be lots of references to that. The first being that this is Foo Fighters' 10th album, and they're going to reference Pearl Jam in just a minute here. We know that Foo Fighters typically take 2 to 4 years to complete an album, so they're not exactly known for their speed of production, although these days that is faster than many other bands at their level. Metallica, for example. Grohl says he wants to do something special for the album since it is the 10th, and that he wants to be like Led Zeppelin and get castles and devils and demons and wizards involved. And it's all very funny, and it's all very Spinal Tap. But this is a reference to the fact that Zeppelin recorded in a castle once. The drums for the song When the Levee Breaks, which was later sampled by the Beastie Boys, was the result of one of these recordings. It was recorded in a castle or something to get that natural reverb. In fact, Jimmy Page was, and probably still is, an occultist. And he even purchased a castle previously owned by Aleister Crowley. He was also summoned to do the soundtrack for Kenneth Anger's movie Lucifer Rising, which they had a falling out, I guess. There's a whole weird story about that. But Kenneth Anger was supposedly some kind of disciple of Aleister Crowley before he died. The Foo Fighters band manager then calls up his secretary, and there's some sort of diabolical understanding that the band will use a particular house in Encino, California to record their album. So this is supposed to inspire the band. The manager is saying, okay, you want to get medieval about this? We'll do it. I've got the perfect place for you. As if he already, was waiting for them to ask for something like that. So the manager's talking to his secretary, and the secretary says something to the effect of, oh, good, finally. As if this was something they were waiting to do for many years. This is echoed towards the end of the film, when the manager reappears, dressed like some sort of warlock, and tells Dave Grohl, we've been waiting 20 years for this. We know that Foo Fighters released their 9th album, Concrete and Gold, in 2017. At that point, one can assume work on their 10th album would begin. 2017 was the 20-year mark for Hawkins officially joining the band. So was his sacrifice planned that far in advance, and are they telling you so blatantly in the film? If you watch my video or read my blog on the memoirs of Billy Shears, this type of thing is discussed a lot in that book. If you want to understand this whole abstract world a little better, he goes into great detail in that book. And I think one figure that gets thrown out, maybe not necessarily in that book, but in Mike Williams' Sage of Quay's research, somewhere he throws up the figure of 20 years as being the general time frame that someone needs to be sacrificed within, as far as these really famous bands goes. So that's just kind of a creepy number to contemplate for a minute while watching this film and studying the dialogue in Studio 666. This meeting concludes with Grohl announcing a Pearl Jam high five. This is obviously a nod to the first Pearl Jam album and the pose of the band on it. But first, notice that Hawkins is the only one not touching the other's hands. Pearl Jam has 5 members, Foo Fighters has 6, but only 5 are touching hands to form the pyramid. Grohl then says, Jeremy has fucking spoken. And there you can see Taylor Hawkins with his fists, and you look at his face and you wonder, does he know he's going to die? Is he like, wow, this is how it's going to go? I'm going to play along in this silly film that's mocking my own death. That's kind of what it feels like. So it's all very creepy. And he's not touching their hands. He's doing a fist, they're all hands together. And later on in the film, they do another Pearl Jam high five, and Grohl says something like, all right, I'm still alive. Kind of almost like mocking Pearl Jam or something. And in that, Taylor Hawkins, his hand is straight out, but he's also not touching the other hands, kind of indicating, I'm not playing along with the game. And remember that, when Jeremy spoke in class today, what did that mean? He blew his head off, right? He killed himself in front of the classmates. So when Grohl says, Jeremy has fucking spoken, is he saying that, someone's speaking and they're going to die because of what they're saying? Is this a reference to maybe Taylor Hawkins, trying to break out and talk against the Illuminati, their boss, and that a death is about to occur as a result? I mean, I think he was probably chosen to be a sacrifice anyway. They're telling us basically, they're all but telling us he's going to die soon in real life. And then lo and behold, it happens. As I said, I think it's supposed to be obvious. Maybe not to you and I, but I think it's supposed to be obvious to other people in the industry, maybe others that would rebel. And perhaps Eddie Vedder was one of those people. And so they're sending messages to Eddie Vedder, hey Eddie, don't go back on that eye of providence, I feel like that's what's going on with all these references to the album 10. Go back to when you were conforming, Pearl Jam. Don't try to go verses against the devil, because you're going to lose. So if the Foo Fighters' 10th album represents the plan for a big ceremonial sacrifice, this scene makes a lot of sense. The high five represents the band's agreement with the plan to complete an album whose climax will be the death of their drummer, reducing their number from 6 to 5. It also represents their allegiance to the One, or the all-seeing eye of the Illuminati, the one that Pearl Jam seemed to rebel against during their 5 Against 1 album. So really, this is reinforcing just about every theory of mine regarding the first Pearl Jam album's cover and what it means. It also reveals the purpose of the film, which is to send a message to those in the industry who want to rebel. Show your allegiance to the One, or we'll make an example of you. Also note that the song Jeremy, the chorus goes, Jeremy spoke in class today. Jeremy kills himself in front of the class. That is what is meant by Jeremy spoke. So when Grohl quotes the lyric, he's saying that someone who spoke up is going to die. Was Taylor Hawkins that person? The delivery guy is played by Will Fort, whose name in the film is Darren Sandelbaum. Darren plays a musician trying to get his band's demo to Dave Grohl. He also bears a resemblance to a younger Lemmy Kilmister. If you look at the name Darren Sandelbaum, it contains 5 syllables. Lemmy Kilmister also contains 5 syllables. Now, I believe there are many red herrings in this film, and this may be another. But given Darren's gruesome demise, the fact he is a musician, looks like Lemmy, same amount of syllables in his name, I feel like the film is saying something about Lemmy's death. We all know Lemmy was old and in bad shape, but that doesn't mean he wasn't murdered on December 28, 2015. Are they telling us? There is at least one Motorhead song in the soundtrack of this film, and that song is Stone Dead Forever. Now, Dave Grohl is in one of the Lemmy movies, totally kissing Lemmy's ass. I remember that. I saw it in the theater when it came out. And Dave Grohl was also at Lemmy's wake and spoke some words. And I remember a few years back just thinking to myself, it's really weird how Dave Grohl is always, way out on top when everyone else is dying around him. Not everyone else, but people are dying around him, and he always ends up on top somehow, giving the eulogy while it's happening. It just made me wonder about him. This guy seems to be in with the industry, and I don't know. He's been chosen for a specific role. And in this film, they hint that he doesn't even really write his stuff, that he's been gone for decades. He hasn't written songs for decades. So I don't know if they're saying that he's gone literally, like this is some kind of replacement, kind of like Billy Shears replacing Paul McCartney, or if they're just saying his soul is gone, or what he does is in the past and now it's just people writing stuff for him. I'm not really sure what they're saying, but if you go back and watch this film from the perspective I'm laying out here, you'll hear you'll hear everything a lot differently. So in the film, there's an annoying neighbor who ends up informing members of Foo Fighters about the curse of the house they're recording in. When they first meet her, Grohl asks her about the history of the house, and the neighbor gets really weird and says something like, "No, Dave, I don't know what you're talking about." And as she says this, she slowly dunks her head below her fence where we can't see her anymore. The fence dividing her yard from where Grohl is staying. And this is one of many Stanley Kubrick references. The way she does it is very distinct. It's very reminiscent of 2001: A Space Odyssey, where Hal, the artificial intelligence, famously states, "No, David, I can't do that." There are also parallels to The Shining. This is a house where people are murdered, just like in The Shining. The murderer's spirit enters the body of the current occupants. In the case of The Shining, it's Jack Nicholson, and in this case, it's Dave Grohl. One Flew Over Cuckoo's Nest is also name dropped at some point, which is another film starring Jack Nicholson, and the story was written by a CIA asset, Ken Kesey. I think that's a red herring, the whole Kubrick angle. It's trying to just, get people like me going, oh wow, what does this Kubrick reference mean? And what does that Kubrick reference mean? But there's something very cheap about it, and I think it's not meant to mean anything. It's just supposed to send you on a wild goose chase. Another red herring involves Grohl's mentioning that the song that they're recording in the film is going to be in the key of L sharp. Now, there is no key of L sharp, but if you count it out in terms of the alphabet, what letter is L? Turns out it is the 12th letter of the alphabet. But he did say L sharp, so if you go a sharp on a note, that's a half step higher. So that's not necessarily one whole step, it's half a step. So numerically, that would make it 12 and a half. So they're taunting people like me. They're going, see, you're almost at 13, but you're not quite there. Ha ha. Thought you were smart looking for numbers, didn't you? This is just a red herring. They're making fun of you. They're laughing at your expense. They're saying, oh, you think there's a meaning to these numbers? There isn't, stupid, ha ha. But that's not the point. The point is a lot simpler. The point is this whole thing about Taylor Hawkins, I think, and how they eat their own. Another example that has a very Spinal Tap feel to it is when Grohl demands Taylor Hawkins count the song off 5, 6, 7 instead of 1, 2, 3. That could be another reference to the 5 against 1 thing, but it's also another red herring. It means nothing, but we're supposed to go looking way into it for meaning. Another example is when Grohl insists Hawkins count off odd numbers instead of 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 5. So here's the logo for the band Dream Widow, the fictional band that is in the film. And this is the symbol for Aleister Crowley's religion, Thelema. He drew it so it could all be done in one stroke, something weird like that. I seem to remember about it. But it's got 6 points. It's not a pentagram, it's a hexagram. Star of David is also a hexagram, so you could almost say it's a different expression of that, but it just looks really cool if you're in a metal band and you want to find a symbol for your band. It looks really crazy and occult. And there's a scene where they're playing the song and Dave Grohl pulls out an easel with this thing on it, and he's got band members allocated for each point, and it just made me laugh because that's very much along the lines that I was thinking when I drew that Reap J. Lamb picture. We saw the 5 band members, and I'm allocating the numbers to the Tree of Life and all that. I think I'm onto something here. I think I'm on their wavelength of how they think. So I think this is worth pursuing. This is worth entertaining to try and understand how the enemy thinks. Lastly, Kerry King of the band Slayer plays a small role in the film. He is a technician named Krug, setting up to record in the house when he gets electrocuted to death. Now, right before he gets electrocuted to death, he says, Jesus effing Christ. I thought that was kind of interesting. Now, coincidentally, Foo Fighters stage manager Andy Pollard died right around the time the band would likely have been filming the movie. There's several points in the film where someone dies, and it is made into a sort of black comedy at those points, where Grohl pretends to be sad but insists that the recording goes on because, quote, that's what he would have wanted. He was a fan. We'll dedicate the album to him. So, the band's kind of like reacting the way a normal person reacts. They're going, wow, this is terrible. We got to leave. We can't do this. And Grohl's kind of like, no, we're going to do it for him. He would have wanted us to move on, And that's a cliche you see all the time. Anytime someone dies, whether it's Chris Cornell or, Dimebag Darrell, whoever, people tend to just kind of get led by the media into this whole, like, let's celebrate his life and let's pay homage to him and do, all these, homage concerts, and let's form a band. Let's call it Temple the Dog, and it's all for him. It's all for Andrew Wood and celebrating his life. But I don't know. It starts to take on this morbid, kind of dark character when you see Grohl, when you see David Grohl really depicting this cliche that's very real and kind of turning it into this Spinal Tap thing. And I don't know how funny it is. I almost can't laugh anymore because it's too dark. It's too real. So I don't know. People think that Kerry King maybe represents that fallen tech that died seemingly while the movie was being recorded. And you don't hear a lot about this guy. If you look this guy up, it's kind of hard to find this out if you get any detail on how he died. Now, I don't claim to have all the red herrings sorted from genuine occult messages here, but clearly the film puts a lot of effort to reach a few different types of audience members they know are watching. The first type would be the ignorant masses who will take it for a simple horror movie and nothing more. The second type are people like myself searching for confirmation of conspiracy theories or other clues and secret occult messages, telling us a story. The third type that is watching this movie are members of the music industry or others in the know who know what's going on and know about the sacrifices and murder and stuff. Of all these, I believe number 3 was the prime target audience. This film did not do well at the box office, and I don't think it was intended to. Grohl has said that Eddie Vedder was amused by the film, but I've never seen or read anything where Vedder is quoted directly. For all we know, the opposite might be true. Perhaps this is a blatant mockery, referring to the original oath expressed by members of Pearl Jam on the album 10. The film is a reminder to those who think they can rebel or get out, a reminder of who they must serve.